What's up, Porch Nation? Welcome back to Porch Nation headquarters here in a marshmallow world known as Worcester. It was week lucky number 13 here in the Greatest League, and we had an impactful week of in-division games. We might not have seen shakeups in the standings, but we had a lot of underdogs this week coming in for a chance to make a move. Many of them would not reach retribution. Our playoff seeds are still primed for change, but our overall playoff picture is becoming much clearer. Week 13, 8 games, let's get into it! Alright, week 13 was here and we had some big showdowns from all divisions. Let's start with the least consequential games, at least as far as championship bracket playoffs are concerned, the West Division. The West started out competitive and even saw a couple of opportunities to stay relevant as recently as a couple of weeks ago. But in a division with the league's highest scoring team and highest ranked team, it's mostly been a fight for second place. Ross and I seem to be doing our best to hover right around that 500 mark. In that light, Ross and I faced off this week. Ross came in at 6-6, and I was 2 games under 500. So what are we to do? Ross dibs down to 6-7 with 1 game remaining to make 500, and I end up at 6-7 as well with the same opportunity. On then to the class of the league as we start and end week 13, Alex versus Ethan. Ethan has seen his struggles this season, especially when the Niners' performance is lacking. But one of Alex's only 2 losses came at the hands of Ethan winning by a fraction of a point in week 8. Well, Ethan and the league would see no such luck this week, as Alex is our highest score of the week for the 3rd time in the past 5 games. Moving then to the second least competitive vis-a-vis the playoffs division in the South. The South Division was home to the highest scoring team up until a couple of weeks ago when Alex took that distinction. Josh Steinberg sits about 21 points shy of Alex now. Josh and Adam gave us a fairly competitive game this week, a difference of less than 6 points. Adam falls just 1 game under 500 now with a game to go, and I bet he wishes Kyle Pitts could have made any progress after their bye week, but alas, he missed both of his targets this week. The other South matchup featured 2 teams fighting for consolation seeding. Andy made it to the first ever fight for 5th last season, losing to Josh Steinberg. Skinner is trying to rebound on a down year after going to back-to-back Super Bowls. Despite a great year for Goff and some other notable names on his roster, this is yet another disappointing performance for Andy's squad, and Skinsy wins this one by 20. Let's take a detour now to our most competitive division, the East. Fresh off being on the losing end of the game of the week last week, Dylan squared off against Jeff this week. Dylan has been the most consistent team in the division since losing too early, but has had a couple of losses in recent weeks. So now he's fighting to get back into first place. Meanwhile, Jeff went on 2 long streaks in a row this season, winning a long one at the beginning of the season and then a losing streak thereafter. And he sits just 1 game out of the wild card race. Dylan is able to rebound this week with a huge head-to-head coming up against Josh Marshall next week, and Jeff makes this 2 losses in a row. Our East Division marquee matchup of the week was a showdown with first-place Josh Marshall and surging Pete. Coming into this one, Pete was on a 4-game winning streak, and Josh Marshall was on a 5-game winning streak. The first win in that streak for Josh came against Pete in week 8. Well, then I guess it's fitting that Pete's winning streak ends the way it began with a loss to Josh Marshall. This win keeps Josh a half game ahead of Dylan in the division, and Pete's place in the wild card race is now in jeopardy, essentially a half game ahead of Steve due to head-to-head tiebreaker. Let's all pile into the cog rail now and head up north, the home of our reigning champion and our game of the week. Berg comes into this week on a 4-game losing streak, but as long as I've known her, Deanna is not to be outdone. Dee comes into this game not only having lost 12 in a row this season, but she ended last season losing 3 in a row as well. So she's staring at history. Adam lost 17 games in a row, our longest ever streak, starting with the final game in 2012, and then losing all 14 of 2013 and the first 2 games of 2014. Well, Berg rebounds this week against the last team he beat before his losing streak, and now Dee is 1 loss away from tying Adam's league longest streak. And now, our game of the week. This one was a big one for our North Division. Joe has been leading this division since week 6, around the time he started a 5-game win streak to keep himself in first for the duration. Now, just 2 weeks before the playoffs, Steve's got himself 2 games out of first with a shot at the division leader this week. This may not have ended a close game. Steve wins this one by almost 30 points, but now their head-to-head record is tied, so if Steve wins 14 and Joe loses, the tiebreaker would come down to division record, which Steve would then own in that scenario. Joe wins the division with either a win for himself or a loss for Steve. And now we check in on the playoff race and a first glimpse at our consolation bracket as of the end of week 13. And all my limbs are falling off.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me?
All right, folks, that was week 13 and our first look at the consolation bracket. Last year's consolation and our first ever winner of the fight for 5th will not be joining the consolation tournament this year. Josh Steinberg, perhaps primed for this rebound, but maybe owing some of his success this season to winning the 5th overall pick, has put up big numbers this season and so far 10 wins compared to last year's 7 total. They say defense wins championships, and look at Josh Marshall sitting atop the East Division, having faced the fewest points, which I guess is our version of defense. In fact, both of our Joshes have provided shutdown defenses this season, M1 and S2 on that list. Josh Marshall has faced about 1,298 points, and Josh Steinberg has faced around 1,381, nearly 100 points more. Number 3 is fellow division leader Joe Parisi at 1,426.5. Number 4 is Jeff at 1,453.5. And Dylan and Steve are 5 and 6, only about 2 points apart at 1,472.6 and 1,473.88. Alex is the last team at 7th fewest points to face less than 1,500 points so far this season at 1,478-ish. Looking forward to our final regular season games, we have one of the biggest games of the whole season coming up in the East. Recently usurped, Dylan takes on first place Josh Marshall in a battle for playoff seeding. Dylan won their other head-to-head, so if Dylan wins this one and ties their records, he'll have the tiebreaker. Meanwhile, Steve and Pete came into week 14 with tied records, and Pete has their head-to-head tiebreaker. So all he needs to do is win or see a Steve loss to punch the final wild card spot. Both Dee and Jeff have enormous opportunities to play spoiler. Furthermore, Jeff has a head-to-head tiebreaker with both Steve and Pete, so if Jeff wins and Steve loses, Jeff is in. Lots of great fantasy football ahead, and I can't wait. So until next time, keep thriving, Porch Nation!
Goddamn, I'm good looking. I'm like a young Michael Caine. Goddamn beautiful and elegant. So fucking sophisticated. Forbes thinks I'm not an eligible bachelor. I'll take this motherfucking force by storm. Coming in hot. Mother Nature ain't got shit on me, motherfucker. Looks so goddamn good out here. Yeah. Oh yeah, motherfucker. Yeah. Get pumped, get jacked. 2017. Woo! Bloop.